Hey, welcome in. I'm Rita, and this is The Story I'm Telling Myself, a podcast about uncovering the beliefs that hold us back and rewriting them with truth, courage, and clarity. If you've ever felt like you're standing in your own way, you are not alone. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Story I'm Telling Myself. So happy that you are with me today. We are already deep into March. It's crazy how time is flying, but I am having such a wonderful time having these conversations with all of you. If you are with us live, Elisa and I want to know you're here. So please come over into the comments, say hello, tell us you're here. And remember, you are part of this conversation. So drop your questions in the comments, add your thoughts. We would love to share those with you and with the rest of the audience. We want to share that conversation with you. So please join us. Elisa, hot off of South by
Hello.
Southwest. Congratulations. That's a
Thank
huge
you.
thing. And then the Wahasu Summit together, you and I. Tell everybody who you are and why they need to know you and have you in their life.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here today. It's an honor. I am an author, so I wrote a fantastic book called Sparkle on Changemaker. Highly recommend it, and we can talk about that a little later on. I'm a consultant and I'm a speaker, and I talk about happiness and social impact and DEIB. So I'm still working in that space, so diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I'm also the board chair of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation based out of Washington, D.C., which is an organization that changed my life when I was a teenager and continues to shape who I am today. And maybe we can chat a little bit about some of the work I've done with them. But beyond the titles, what I really do is I help people and companies build culture of happiness and belonging and impact, because I really believe that designing workplaces where people thrive and where leadership is inclusive is where impact isn't really an afterthought is a strategy, right? It's what helps companies be better businesses. So it's just a little bit about me.
Thank you for that. Look, I've
Yeah.
got Elisa's LinkedIn profile listed for you here because you should be following Elisa. And here is the name of that book that she was talking about that all of you need to add to your bedside table, Sparkle on Changemaker. So make sure that you are checking that out. And again, come say hello to us in the comments. So Elisa, we're actually going to talk about your work in
Okay.
the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. And that's part of the story that you're going to share with us about stepping into this significant leadership role and all of the internal narrative that's set off in your brain that you have been navigating. So set the context for us a little bit. A lot of us don't know a lot about that organization, but tell us a little bit about your history and how you found that organization and then how you came into your chair seat.
Yeah, sounds good. So the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, based out of DC, helps students from across the country in areas around culture, around education, workplace development. And I actually came across them when I was a high school senior and I was applying for colleges. So college was definitely on my radar, definitely wanted to go, but financial aid was definitely also something that I needed to take into consideration. And having scholarships to get there was a huge reality for my family. And the Hispanic Heritage Foundation had this great scholarship honoring and recognizing Hispanic students from across the country, especially in terms of service. So, how high school students were giving back. And that's a core part, I think, of who I am in terms of showing up, service above self. That is definitely a Rotarian slogan. So if there's any Rotarians online, that's where that comes from. And I applied for the scholarship. I thought it would be great. And little did I know that that application ended up changing my life and the trajectory of my life. I ended up winning the national award for that, and then have been connected with the foundation ever since. And so the foundation still does this scholarship. And when I say it changed my life, it opened up opportunities outside of just the financial support to go to college, in terms of connections, networking, and being parts of a larger community across the country. So I've been with the organization for over 20 years, which is crazy. And I think what's really interesting is I was invited to the board a few years ago, and that was, I think, my first moment of why me? um, I've asked myself that a lot, and I've always had this moment at like these crosswords where I was called to lead, and that's what I felt this was, right? An invitation from our CEO to come and be part of the board in a leadership position. And I completely doubted if I was the right person to be there and to be part of that. Um, I I feel the weight of why me, and I had a moment of saying, no, it's okay. Like I think somebody else can have that role, or say, all right, let's trust this leader who believes in me and sees something in me and wants to take me on this journey. And so I
Can
did
I
that.
pause you? Can I pause you here and can we dig into this conversation in your head a little bit? Because
Yeah,
everybody talks about imposter syndrome because we all have it. We all have these moments when opportunity is right in front of us,
yeah,
and
100%,
we go, "Oh, I'm just maybe that's not for me. Are you sure
100%.
you meant me? I'm
Yeah.
not really sure that you meant me." So was it for you? Were you looking at, because you've been in the organization, like this was this major formative time in your life that you
Mhm.
found
Yeah.
this, so I'm sure that you had a lot of esteem for what was happening in the
Yeah.
Hispanic Heritage Foundation, and you also knew the gravity of the weight of what they meant to young people like you. So
100%.
were you looking at the leaders that you had seen before you and looking at them and saying, "Oh, I'm not that yet"? Or were you looking
100%.
at people around you and saying, "But that would be a better person than me"? Where were your thoughts of
I would
going
say
in that comparative moment?
so, definitely both of those, right? And so when I received the call, I felt like I should have been like super excited, right? And I had been, as you said, I'd been involved with the foundation for many years since I was a teenager. The organization had fundamentally changed my life. I felt like a sense of belonging with the organization. It introduced me to many possibilities. And yet, I think that first reaction wasn't excitement, it's exactly what you said. It was doubt, right? So, am I the right person for this? I looked around at the board, and there were people who had incredible careers and incredible positions of power and influence with the community. And I didn't feel like I was that. And I was like, well, what if I don't measure up to my fellow board members? Um, and then something that we haven't like totally talked about yet is I am a light-skinned presenting Latina. So I have blue eyes, blonde hair. Um, my family jokes that I'm the recessive baby, right? So I don't look like a lot of my family members. Um, but this is a real issue, right? So when I walk into spaces, people are like, "Who is this woman? Like, why is she here? Does she
She must
belong?"
be Latina adjacent, right? 'Cause
Adjacent, right? So, yeah, people think it's my last name is my husband's, and my husband is Colombian, but I kept my last name. So Juarez is, I think, the most Mexican name you can get. And so like I kept telling these stories that like maybe I wasn't ready for this role, that it needed to be somebody else that had more, again, more esteem, more cachet, someone had more experience, someone that, I mean, like looked, and I put that in air quotes, like the community that we were serving, someone that maybe had a different background. Um, but then I had this moment of, if not me, then who, right? And I think that was the powerful piece for my own reflection of other women who may have been looking at me and saying, if you don't do it right, then I can't see myself in that role in the future. And so just as I look up to so many incredible women who are 5, 10 years ahead of me. I'm like, that's what I want to go towards. I have to become that for that next generation.
All right. Now we're just going
Um,
to pause for a moment,
yeah,
Elisa.
sure.
Get your
Yeah.
fingers ready. We're going to do some
Okay.
snaps.
Okay.
For earlier, Elisa, who said yes, who overcame that imposter syndrome and allowed
Yeah.
you to have, people say all the time, what will your future, what will your future
Yes.
self choose for you, right? When you're
Yes.
facing this imposter syndrome, like what will your future self thank you for? So
Yep.
let's thank earlier Elisa
I
for
love that.
allowing
Yeah.
you this moment, right? Because
Yeah.
it's, inside of all of us, I don't know any. Well, this is it. I don't know. I think it's like I don't. I'm not that deep into the DSM because that's not really my thing. But probably for people who are strong egoists, that maybe they do have that broken child somewhere down in there. But I think all of us have like that middle school cafeteria moment, like that deep seated fear, some experience that felt like that, where you walk in and you're looking for like first day of school, where am I going to sit? Who's going to be my friend group or whatever? And the fear of rejection. Rejection is such a strong experience maker
Yep.
for all of us. And we will do almost anything to protect ourselves from
Yep.
experiencing rejection. And I can't help but wonder if in those moments like this, when if there's just not this thing in the back of your head of like, what if I say yes and I fail and then I can't be a part of this thing that's been so important to me for so long?
Oh,
Were you
100%. 100%. I feel like I still go through that. But I love that analogy or the imagery of the cafeteria in middle school. I have such a clear image of what that looks like in my head. And I think when it comes to leadership, I believe it's not about fitting a mold. It's about expanding the space, right? So
oh,
I
wait,
was,
wait, wait, wait,
oh,
wait. We gotta say that again because that was some powerfulness right
what
there.
did it's not about fitting a mold, right? It's not about continue. This is my belief. This is how I see it. It's not about necessarily continuing the status quo, but it's about expanding the space. And when I had the opportunity, in this case, being invited to the board, and then I was then voted in as board secretary for a few years, and then voted in as interim board chair, and now I sit at the board as the the board chair of the organization. I I think that I had at least two choices, and I still go through this all the time, right? I can spend my time justifying my presence and like ruminating on what that means, or I can use that presence to expand the space for others, right? And so going back to your thought of the cafeteria table, right? Like you can hide and say like, why me? Why doesn't anybody want to sit with me? Like da da. Or take that moment and say, all right, who else can I bring to the table who might need that? Who might need that extra hand and that space provided to them? So
I love the thing that you just said, and I want to pause on this because again, I think these are the internal narratives
yeah,
that make us stuck, that self-limit us. And you just named a really, really big one, Elisa, and that is the how do I prove I belong in this space?
mm-hmm.
So instead of stepping in and embracing and say, this is my new space, how do I want to show up? What do I want to create? So many of us getting stuck in this place of how do I prove my worthiness to be here?
100%. Yes,
And so
and I would
when
say,
you see people coming into when you see new people coming into the Hispanic Heritage Foundation events, do you look for that and do you notice when they are kind of stuck in that conversation?
yeah, and I would say yes, yes, and so I think the foundation has an incredible team that does this day in and day out and continues to bring on new partners and is in new locations and working with more students. And I see my role right now of the board, right? So how does the board have that feel? Um, and my leadership style might be a little different, right? I I think there's another piece that is at play, and it's being a woman leader. Um, because that's also like playing in the back of my mind, right? So I feel that as a woman in a position of power and leadership, there's this like tension between you need to be strong, but not too strong. Like you need to advocate for change, but don't make people uncomfortable. Be a trailblazer, try things, do things differently, try new things, but don't go too far from the path, right? And so there's that's going on in my mind. And then there's, are you Latina enough? Are you representing us well enough? Um, are, are you the one for this position? And so like those are the things that are going through my mind as I approach the board, right? And so the board position, and they are phenomenal leaders and they're phenomenal humans. And I love working with them, but there's still that like those tensions. But I would say that it doesn't only like live there, right? I think it shows up in my professional life, right? We were just at Oahu, right? We were just at the World Happiness Summit, and there's still always those moments as I take on like step onto stage, like, am I the right person to be here, right? Am I like, did the universe trick me to be here? like what happened to show up, right? So I
Well,
think
and you
there's
hosted a panel, so there's also this whole thing about like,
yeah,
I have to imagine this pressure in hosting the panel of, am I
yeah,
guiding this conversation in the most effective way? Like, it would be so hard for
yeah,
me to not get stuck in my head about that, and
yeah,
choosing to stay present. Like,
yeah.
like the pathway through this so much is choosing to stay present. So tell us a little bit about how what were some of the signals that you were allowed yourself to receive that allowed you to start to step back from some of that imposter syndrome?
So I ask for feedback, right? I think that's important. I I tend to leave authentically with transparency, right? So like from the very beginning, listen and meeting other people, like what are your visions? Like what are you hoping to get out of this? And then aligning and then doing the thing, right? Whether it's a meeting or an event or a speaking engagement, and then following up afterwards. Is that what you were looking for? How could we have done it differently? And getting feedback is always really helpful. So for example, the World Happiness Summit, right? I asked, right? So people would come up and say, like, I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt the energy, and those things helped me say, okay, like I can do this. Like this is something where I'm supposed to be. Um, and so that helps. I think it's that feedback loop.
Mm.
But it's still not easy, right? I still have moments where I'm like, people are amazingly talented and wonderful. And I was like, am I supposed to be here too? And the answer, I think, is consistently yes. And I would say that the people who I look up and admire to are also a little nervous about being there, right? Like, I think it's a little bit human. There's very, very few people that have a sense of like worth, which is amazing. So I heard Ilona, our rugby gymnast, gymnast, Olympian that helped our team, the U.S. team, get to I think a silver in this past Olympics. Ilona, I'm blanking on her last name. I heard her in an interview, and she was like, "I don't have imposter syndrome. I worked really hard to be here, and I got here, and like I deserve this." And I was like, "Those are goals, right?" But
Yes.
those are goals. But for the most part, the people that I talk to, that I sit back and admire and look at in awe, are also struggling with this, right? Um, so yeah.
Well, and I think that as a female, I grew up with a lot of signaling. I was actually told early in my career that I was too big, that I was making, myself too big in the room. I was taking up too much space, that I needed to make room for other people. And that was helpful, but at the same time, I think there's all kinds of signals that we receive like that are about, I don't think they would have told a man what they told me. honestly.
100%.
I think
100%.
I think I think a man who was as smart as I was, that was showing up and asking questions and doing all the things, they
Yep.
would have said, "Oh, let's promote him." And to me, they're like, maybe you just need to not talk so much, and maybe and be softer in how you present your ideas and stuff like that. And so, and then you take the intersection, right? So female is just one thing, but then you take the intersection of race, religion, all of these things that are not the cultural norm of US um, culture. For you, it's been in other places, even around the world. And
Yeah.
like in Mexico, you have a
Yeah.
whole,
Yeah.
other thing, but you hit those intersection points, and in each one, it feels like sometimes want to carve something away from you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And I think, and the and to that is there are so many other people watching, right? And watching to see how we respond and how we show up, to help give those cues to them, even if we never had an actual one-on-one conversation. And that's my hope. I think that's my hope with telling even like this story is that it's hard, but again, if it's not you with the experience and the knowledge and the background, the passion, the insights, the experience that you bring, then who, right? And this can be for so many different angles, right? It can be in the
Yes.
workplace, it can be in your place of worship, it can be in your community, it can be in your kids' school. Um, like sometimes like, why doesn't somebody do that? And I'm like, wait, that's me. I should be doing that, right? Because if not me, then who? Um, yeah. So I
Well, and
think
it's not only answering the call. I mean, I think the other piece of it's not, if not me who, is putting yourself out there. So many
yeah.
people have stories
Oh my God, yes.
about. Karen was my very first guest, Karen Laos, and she shared a story about how she used to sing with Up With People. Are you old enough to remember Up With People, Elisa? They
No.
traveled. They were singers. They traveled all over the world, and there was an opportunity for a solo piece, and she really wanted it, but she didn't give herself permission to raise her hand. And so the girl next to her raised her hand and got it. And all season long, she had to stand there right next to this person who was doing this thing that she wanted so deeply in her body, but she didn't give herself
Raise their hand.
permission. And
Raise their
I
hand.
have been that person over and over and over again, of
Yeah.
saying, well, it's okay if somebody asks me, but if nobody's asking me, then once again, I'm being too loud. If I raise my hand and I say, yeah, me, then I am self-aggrandizing, all the things that I've been told about why I need to, be more of a turtle.
Yeah. But so, and I
Right.
think the thing that like, and I always have to take my own like the spoonful of medicine of we all have amazing, precious gifts, and if we don't shine them to the world, then the world loses out. And here's like a very tangible example. In my previous role, I worked at a healthcare company leading culture, and we had 100 centers around the country. And I spent a lot of time listening and learning from the team, like why do you feel happy here? What could we do better? And I was doing one of these listening sessions in Chicago, and this one of our so think of like similar like a medical assistant had they're doing a little lunch in the break room. So I kind of crashed in, like, hey, how's everybody doing? Whatever. And they were celebrating because she had just announced that she's going to have a baby. And the baby was very excited, that people were very excited about it. She was a little nervous because I think this was a surprise. And so there was a little like tension of like, like what is that going to look like? And I realized that we did not have parental leave at the company that I was working at. I was like, if we don't get parental leave, right? And this had been a theme. This she wasn't the only one, but I had heard this consistently. We had done surveys, like we had data to back this up. I was like, if I don't move this along and continue to advocate more strongly, this new mom will not have parental leave when her baby comes. And so that
Wow.
was
Yes.
that like click for me. Like it made it human and it made it real. And it helped me take all of the work that we had been doing on the back end on paper and research and put a face to that story and present it. And it was one of those moments, like, I was like, no, it's not really my time. Like, there's a process, it has to go, and we have to do the thing, and da da da. Like, but with a new mom who had a baby, like, I knew I had, by that time, I had 7 months before that baby was born, right? Like, I had to take action. And I think because of that, in that moment of like, there's nobody, I looked around, like, there's nobody else that's doing this. This is me. I have to do it. If not me, then who? Like, literally, there was nobody else. And we passed it. We passed parental leave for moms, dads, however babies came into their, or babies or children came into their lives. And she will never know. Like, she'll never know that this was like, she was the inspiration behind this. But she had leave, and that leave then had a ripple effect to hundreds of other people at the company. And it was that, again, going back to that crazy moment of imposter syndrome. Like, I can't actually do this. Like, I had never done it before. I didn't know how to do it. But if not me, then who, right? And because of that, because of that idea and that thinking of saying, like, if I don't do this, nobody else will take care of her, right? We got to get moving. So that's what, like, I think that's like tying it back to using your gifts and talents and opportunities can have fundamental impact on people's lives.
Yes,
So
and I
that's
wanted to
an
come back. I
example.
wanted to come back to that. I think that is so powerful, and this gets to your book as well, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is at the core of what your book is about. But this
Yep.
question of, are you letting your gifts shine for the world to see, and what is the world losing out on if you're not?
Yeah.
Like, asking yourself that powerful question. And in getting, and again, we've got to overcome, many of us have been told, dampening down, limiting
100%.
narratives about, you're not allowed to shine too bright, right? And so many of us have to do the work to overcome that.
Yeah.
What are some of the keys? I know you share some of these in the book about how you unlock that ability to really let go of that narrative and allow yourself to stand in your brilliance.
I think we can do hard things, and living in the being a human in this world is not always easy. It's hard, but it helps getting to the first step, right? And taking that first step. And I actually, like, will hear the voice. I hear it all the time. I hear the voice and I will say, "Yep, I hear you, I see you, I acknowledge you." But there's a bigger purpose here that we need to, like, look forward to, right? I have such a clear memory of sitting in that break room. I was like, I have a choice here. I have a choice to continue to do research and work, and continue to build the case, and it eventually will get done, maybe. And I was just like, or I can use the skills that I have, the relationships I've built, the knowledge I have, and using her as an inspiration to take action and, like, take that step. Was it scary? Yep, absolutely. Right. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I just believed in, like, this bigger cause and this bigger light ahead. And I think this happens all the time. So the book Sparkle on Changemaker is really designed for any human in any position, usually within community, at your school and your church, in your organization, of thinking of, like, what are those things that I see that I can make a difference in, and taking that step and making a difference. You don't have to have it all figured out. You really don't, but you do need to have that, like, courage to take that first step. And sometimes that is hard, and I acknowledge that. I do.
Well, I often find the first step is so valuable is
Yeah,
starting the conversation.
yeah,
One of the things that I've chosen to embrace and take great pride in is, I may not be the person that comes up with the idea, but I am often the spark.
yes, 100%.
I I am the thing that sparks a conversation that gets to a big idea. And there's power in that, in being the
Yeah,
person that can do that.
be the
So,
spark.
if you are listening, if you're with us and you felt this moment, where you had that, you could have had that, if not me, who, but you talked yourself down before you got there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And part of the reason you talked yourself down was because you weren't sure that you knew the full answer. the answer might just be start the conversation.
Start 100%. Yeah, I mean, we all live in this world. We all have experiences. We know things intrinsically. Our bodies know things, right? We know we know things because of our experiences, because of the good, the bad. And if you don't say yes and you don't become that, um, the world will lose that sparkle that you can offer. And you say yes to things not because you have all the answers, not because you're 100% ready, but because the world is bigger than you. And that's why you say yes. And that is why you take that first step. Um, some of us might have kids who are watching us, right? Like,
Yes.
how do we want to show up for them, right? Um, like
Well,
fun, like,
and I think I don't know how you feel about this in your work, but I think the other big thing that trips us up, and I think we actually had a speaker talk about this at Wahasu, is that we tell ourselves, yes, we did. We tell ourselves that we have to do it perfectly.
oh
So
yeah,
we think that our job is to message, to tell or sell some important thing that's going to grab everybody's attention, but we've got to do it perfectly. We only get one shot at it. And it
right.
was the art. Who was the artist? I can't remember her name. On day 2 in the yellow
Yes,
jacket.
I have an image of her.
Yeah, I
Yes,
can't think of her name, but she
we'll
was
figure it
telling a story about in art school, they did this
out.
experiment. And in the experiment, they took half of the class and they gave them a set amount of time and they said, make as many pottery pieces as you can in this amount of time. And then the
Yeah.
other half of the class was told, make the most perfect pottery piece that
Yeah.
you can. And they were given the same amount of time. And at
Yep.
the end, the best pottery pieces came from the people that did as many as they could, not the people that tried to do the most perfect one. And this is the thing about it's just one step. It's not that you have to have the perfect influential speech to give to convert everybody. Sometimes the perfect first thing to do is ask a question. Have you ever
Mhm.
thought about what could be different if,
Mhm.
right? I mean, just start a conversation with curiosity, invite people into a conversation that can naturally, but we've been trained that good leaders present the Winston Churchill speech at the mic, right? That brings
Yeah.
every, but that is not the only, and that is not
No.
even the most effective. What we didn't get to see were all the conversations that he had before Martin Luther
Yep.
King. What are all the formative conversations that got to we have a dream? So we think that we see people at their pinnacle moments, at their apex, and we think that we have to step into that moment when we have this sense of something is sitting in our hearts that we care about deeply, that we feel that pull, but while we talk ourselves away from it because we think the first step is this perfection when actually we're going to get all of these opportunities and we get to refine and build all
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah. And practice, right? Practice. I have a 4-year-old, and he was like having a moment the other day where he didn't want to color because it wasn't going to be perfect. And I was like, hey, I don't know where you picked that up because I did not, that is not for me. So we drew a little monster, a little love monster. It was very cute. And it was not very good. So I was like, look, let's do it again. And so he did not want to. And I was like, let's pick up a pen, let's do the same little love monster again. And we did the love monster again, and it was better. And I was like, see, like we have to keep practicing. Like if you don't do it, it's fine. The first time is fine. We have to keep practicing. Um, and that's a great analogy, right? Martin Luther King was
Yes,
like
yes.
I Have a Dream was not his first speech, right? Like
And I love
our
that you're teaching them that because oftentimes the biggest forgiveness that we need to do that our internal narrator is holding us back from is forgiving ourselves
100%.
for not getting that A plus the first time out of the gate. Right.
100%.
And
100%.
so
And I mean, that's not how, I don't think that's how the world is. And I think the world is interesting because we make mistakes and we learn, right? Like I think there's one thing to make the same mistake over and over and over again, but I think we need to give ourselves permission to make mistakes and to slip, and to continue to lead anyway, to continue to take up that space, to continue to tell our stories and own our stories and our own complexities and move forward. But just as we ask people to give us forgiveness for those, I think we need to be willing and encouraging for people that are around us to have those mistakes, and learnings, because that's what we do. We're human. We learn, we grow, and the moment we stop learning is the moment we start dying. Right? We need to continuously learn and grow and be more for others as well.
And say yes. Say yes more often. If not
Say
me,
yes.
who? Say yes. Say
Who.
yes to yourself. Well,
Yeah.
we're at the end of our time, Elisa, but you and I, we could just take this and we could go in so many directions. And I am
So
just such
funny.
a fan of you and your work. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for listening to the show. If you are catching us in replay, #replay, and leave your questions or comments. And Elisa and I will be in the comment section to respond to you. Make sure Sparkle on Changemaker, excellent book. You should check that out and connect with Elisa on LinkedIn. And thank you for joining us tomorrow. Tomorrow. I'm so excited. Leanne Elliott is with me tomorrow morning. It's 8 a.m. We're going to, for East Coasters, we're going to be on your commute with you. You can let us be your accompaniment for your commute tomorrow morning. For my West Coasters, I don't know if you're the get up before dark. That was something we learned at Wahasu. Get up while it is still dark. It's good.
Yeah.
It's actually good for your happiness.
Yeah.
If you're one of those people, then you'll get to join us maybe live at 8 a.m. But Leanne is she's in Eastern Europe, so it's going to be late in her day for her. But 8 a.m. for your commute, we are going to be together, and she's going to tell her story about her first time as a manager and learning the valuable lesson about asking for help. And look, you may think you know this, but we all need reminders, because I'm telling you, that little person in the back of your head is constantly telling you that you're not allowed to ask for help and you got to do it all yourself. And you're going to look silly if you have to ask for, I mean, like, the stories are endless. And Leanne's going to help us give ourselves more permission to ask for help and to have more empathy and acceptance of others who ask of help from us. So be sure that you join us. She is the host of the #1 podcast in the UK. And I am just thrilled that she's coming to have a conversation with us. Like, who are we? But she said yes. So good for us. All right. So join us back. Thank you so much, Elisa, for being with us. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Everybody have a wonderful day. Bye. Thank you for joining us on The Story I'm Telling Myself. If you loved this episode, would you do us a big favor to help us reach a bigger audience? Simply subscribe to the Story I'm Telling Myself podcast and rate this episode and share it with a friend. Thank you for listening.